Hi, and welcome into the Take the North podcast Mailbag edition, along with Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune. I am Mark Grote of Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Adam Studzinski. I think Dan will be joining us here on one of these famous Mailbag episodes that we have put together for you today. What's up, Danny boy?
Grote Studs is like the Mr. McFeely to deliver the mail to the Take the North podcast. So it's always good to have him ding the bell and come on by.
What was that? It was like urgent choo-choo music, right?
We haven't had a mailbag episode in so long that I don't even know if you were co-hosting the last time we had a mailbag episode.
We did one mailbag episode very early on in the David Haugh takeover.
I had several messages in my social media replies saying, "Hey, where are the mailbag episodes?" And so we launched a little request for questions, and we got flooded with questions, which is great.
Let's go.
Engaged audience, and there is one familiar question asker that I think we will hear from within this podcast. But Mr. McFeely, Adam Studzinski, come on, join us. Let us know what we got to answer.
First of all, Adam Studzinski, have you ever heard of Mr. McFeely?
Mr. McFeely? No, I know Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World, but Mr. McFeely, no, not familiar.
We don't need to tell him.
Was a mustachioed mailman on the Fred Rogers Welcome or the Neighborhood of Make Believe. Is that right, Dan? I get it all right?
It's correct. Okay. Yes.
So Mr. I did watch some Mr. Rogers in my youth, but I'm too young to remember those details.
Okay, so, that's enough.
You can see the picture.
Oh,
there it is.
Okay, yeah. I've seen that before. Well, anyway.
Okay. Yes, fair enough.
Our
Give us the question.
Yeah, go ahead. What's the question?
Our first question comes from this one actually came from Blue Sky. Let me see. The person doesn't really have a name. BDB35 on Blue Sky.
Dan Bernstein? Is that Dan Bernstein on Blue Sky?
No, I don't. I think his handle on Blue Sky is just Dan Bernstein.
No, he's on Truth, I think. He's on Truth.
Oh, yeah, maybe he's no, don't put that on him. Okay, anyway, BDB35 asks, could/should Ben Johnson have happened last year? Was the Bears job not open because he wasn't available, or did he go back to the Lions because the Bears job wasn't open? Seems like there would have been mutual interest last year. Why didn't the Bears do what the Cubs have done twice now?
Grote, I'm going to jump on this one because I have some thoughts, and thoughts are important in mailbag answers.
You have center ring, my friend. Hit it.
We know what Ben Johnson has said publicly, and he said that he would not have taken this job a year ago because he was not available emotionally. He said that he wanted to go back and tend to some unfinished business in Detroit, which is entirely believable and understandable. And he has emphasized that the Bears job was not available, that the Bears made their decision to stick with Matt Eberflus. And so there was really no point in entertaining hypotheticals that weren't reality. Albert Breer, in multiple forums, both in print and in his own mailbag episode, has insinuated multiple times, Grote, that had this job come open a year ago, that Ben Johnson would have been heavily interested and maybe compelled to take it.
Yeah.
If that's indeed the case, I'm so bothered. And I have been since the first time that Albert insinuated this in print a few weeks ago, because if you went ahead and you doubled down on Matt Eberflus with Ben Johnson available to you a year ago, and it resulted in what it resulted in, which was 5-12, last place, 10-game losing streak, completely disrupted development of your number one overall pick quarterback. It is unbelievable the negligence that would reflect, right? From the top down, that you had an opportunity to pivot in a new direction at a time where everyone was telling you it's okay to get a new head coach with an offensive mind paired up with the young, talented, uber talented Caleb Williams who's coming into your building. And you passed on that despite the possibility that he would have been heavily interested. Like, what a waste of everyone's time that has been over the last 12 months. And no one had their time more wasted than Caleb Williams. And so, like, I'm bothered by it. We know what Ben has said publicly. Job wasn't available. He wasn't available. But what are your thoughts on that entire
all well said. There's nothing that you said that I'm going to pick apart. I will say that I agree. I mean, they've dropped hints throughout. There's not enough hints is the right word, but they've said enough for us to be able to infer that, yes, Ben Johnson has been wanting this job for a while. And if it was open last year, my guess is that actually he would have taken the job. Dennis Allen adding more of that by saying that Ben Johnson contacted him at the end of this year. That means to me while games were still going on. And maybe we could generalize and say that he was going to have him be his DC no matter where he was, but it just makes me think that this was the job that he has wanted for a while. I mean, he's the way he came running to the Bears, the interview process. I wanted the job, he said in the beginning of the interview. He then said it at the end of the interview with everybody present. So getting into the waste of the year part, yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's that they should have. Why didn't they do what the Cubs did? I have no idea. It went along with the complications with Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles, and I think Poles being a young GM and feeling a sense of loyalty towards Matt Eberflus, a loyalty to allow him to come join this roster that was supposedly revamped. So I think that while it was the wrong decision that Ryan Poles made in bringing Matt Eberflus back, I think that it was kind of a naive decision that went into it, and maybe a learning experience for Ryan Poles and the Bears brass, period.
Painful alternative reality if that was indeed a possibility. But here we are where we are at the end of January 2025. And let's get back to this guy, Mr. McFeely, Adam Stinzinski.
All right, fellas. So this one is kind of top of mind, especially this week and in probably the next week. So I want to make sure we get this one out there. This is from Todd Kunis on Twitter. By the way, just so I should have thrown this out there, if you want to ask any future questions, we're always open. It's at Take the North Pod on Twitter. You can submit questions to our Gmail as well. It is takethenorthpod@gmail.com. So either of those spaces, you can hit us up, and we'll certainly be doing more of these going forward. So anyway, Todd Kunis on Twitter. IMO, the O-line coach, is almost as important as the O coordinator. Who do you think the Bears will end up signing?
I don't know. I have not really heard a bevy of names at this point for the offensive coordinator spot. Dan, I don't know if you've heard anything. Of course, the offensive line coach is really important to see what they're going to run, what the shape of the offensive line is going to be, all of that. But I can't sit here and tell you I got a bunch of names for you right now, Dan. Do you?
So Brad Biggs from the Senior Bowl reported that offensive line coach from Ohio State, Justin Fry, was interviewing with the Bears for that offensive line job. Tulane offensive line coach Dan, I don't know how to pronounce this. I've been bad at this, whether it's Ruchar. He's been in the mix also for this job. I don't know where they're ultimately going to land on this. I do believe that it's an important position that they've got to get locked down soon, and they've got to have somebody that can unite with Ben Johnson in a way that's really productive. Look, like we've been kind of monitoring this coaching staff evolution here since it started, and they've got many more positions to fill here before it's complete. And that's probably the most important one left on the docket.
Yeah, and you know what I think about, of course, you're right, Todd. I mean, it's a highly important position, and we know how important it's been, over the last 5 to 10 years in trying to build something with these quarterbacks, whether it be Justin Fields or Mitch Trubisky or Jay Cutler before that. But so much of it is Ben Johnson and what Ben Johnson wants and what he wants to run and how he wants his offensive linemen to look. So while it's important, I think, again, Ben Johnson's voice is going to be the biggest when it comes to making that O-line right.
No question about it. Studs, next question.
All right, next up, we're going to go to our Gmail, fellas. So again, it's takethenorthpod@gmail.com. This is from Greg Feltes. I don't want to, after we had the thing in our last episode, I want to make sure I get these names right. Although in my defense, I've never seen these names before. Feltes is Greg's last name.
Felts.
Great. Feltsy. There we go. We're calling you Feltsy. I hope that's okay,
Hey.
Greg. So, all right, Greg asks, if the Bears aren't willing to extend Braxton Jones this offseason, despite some great analytical numbers from PFF and ESPN, do you think they need to be aggressive in the draft or free agency to line up a replacement for now or down the line? How do you think the Bears value him, and how should they value him?
Go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, this is case in point. It does not matter how Ryan Poles views Braxton Jones. It matters entirely how Ben Johnson views Braxton Jones. And I've been saying for a while that it's not harsh to say this in the NFL, where you're trying to climb a steep mountain to be successful over time. Functional gets you so far. At some point, you need top tier offensive line play to reach the next level. And so I think the Bears should have their eyes wide open at 4 of their 5 starting spots on their offensive line this offseason to try to figure out if they can find upgrades, whether that's in free agency, whether that's in the draft, whether it's day 1, day 2. Look, like that's, like Braxton Jones has been a nice story for the last couple of years, but there is a lot of work ahead of the Bears to put this offensive line together in a way where Caleb Williams will feel consistently protected and consistently confident in what's ahead of him. And so you have to prioritize that position group, and that's interior. That's either tackle position. Obviously Darnell Wright's going to be a starter for you, but do you see him with the flexibility to move over to the left side if you need him to? He did that in college. You need to go into this with very ambitious eyes, and Ben Johnson's eyes are the most important at this time to try to get this offensive line solidified in a way that will make his offense work.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it right from the beginning that Ryan Poles has to finally concede that evaluation. And we know how much Ryan Poles has liked the 5th round player in Braxton Jones from the day he was drafted, and us being inside the Walter Payton Center. I remember it pretty vividly, Dan, and seeing all of a sudden Braxton Jones starting at left tackle, and there's Tevin Jenkins sitting with the 2s, and was like wild to see. And I think that Ryan Poles has gotten him to a point where Braxton Jones where he's a serviceable left tackle in the National Football League. But if you want to head in a new direction and a different direction and a better offense, and you've got Ben Johnson, I'll just be blunt about it, Dan. I don't think Braxton Jones can be your starting left tackle. And I think that Ben Johnson will see it that way.
And maybe Ben Johnson loves him. We'll see. Certainly for me, I'm not in a rush to give Braxton Jones an extension. Like, if he has to play out the final year of his rookie deal, he has to play out the final year of his rookie deal. But look, like, you're trying to get this offensive line more in line with what the Detroit Lions have brought to the table week after week for the last couple of years here. And so you have to be ready to make difficult decisions. That might be one of them. All right, Studs, bring us the next one.
Studsy.
So we will go back to Blue Sky for this one. By the way, we're going to make a Take the North Blue Sky account. This was in response to your Blue Sky account, Dan Wiederer. I personally am not on Blue Sky yet. I don't know about you, Grote. I'm not.
So what is Blue Sky?
It's basically now be careful. It's hard to say this out loud because
I know, like, it's you have Twitter, that's X. So is Blue Sky? Are you saying like Blue Sky is like a liberal?
That's what people will judge it as, but Blue Sky is really just Twitter before Twitter became toxic and angry. And
I got
you. Think Twitter in like 2012 is what I like pre
so Studs, that's how it was sold to me.
It's not political.
That's how it was sold to me when I signed up for it, and then I put out a tweet in December saying, "Hey, I'm also starting a Blue Sky account over here, and you should go read the replies to that if you want to be jarred by
I'm sure
the passionate reaction that people have." So get ready, Grote. But anyway, you're going to be able to deliver your mail there. Take the North audience.
all right, McFeely.
Right. So anyway, this is from Sean on Blue Sky. Sean asks, who are the free agent centers that might be available this year, and do you think any of them could fit with the Bears?
I got this one for you, Grote.
Oh, you do? I was going to say, man, if you got, you're ahead of me, man. I did not do my center homework yet. The combine's coming up. I will. Dan, show us your ways of the center.
So Ryan Kelly is the top shelf free agent in the market. He's been playing in Indianapolis, and it seems like Indianapolis is going to let him walk into free agency next month. Austin Corbett from Carolina, similar situation. Made a lot of money this last year, has a chance to walk into free agency and get paid again. Those will be your sort of top shelf options in free agency. Right below them is probably Coleman Shelton in terms of a guy who's experienced and made a lot of starts. And so I'm going to be really interested to see if the Bears consider bringing him back at all, if familiarity means anything with that up front. But look, there's just not, like, the shelf is not stocked with high-end centers this year in free agency. And so Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles and their staffs are going to have to get creative to figure out how they look at this, understanding that they've got all these positions to fill. It will be interesting to see whether they decide. There's Drew Dahlman, I believe, from Atlanta, is also a guy who might factor into this list. you go down a level and you've got like some depth pieces and some guys that are kind of backups and could play for you there. I don't know how you address that position. Do you use an early pick? You got 4 in the top 75, but I think what we do know above all else is that the Bears need to walk into OTAs in May with 2 upper tier additions to the offensive line, whether that's draft or free agency, 2 free agents, 2 draft picks, whatever it is. I want 2 upper tier additions to my offensive line before we have our first OTA practice. And the center position is certainly on the watch list, because here's the other thing, Grote, the in-house free agents that the Bears have on the offensive line include Tevin Jenkins, Matt Pryor, Coleman Shelton, Jake Curran, Larry Borum, and Doug Kramer. Their current under contract offensive linemen are Karan Amagaji, Darnell Wright, Ryan Bates, Braxton Jones, and Bill Murray, with 4 other guys, including Ricky Stromberg, who's a center, as a reserve futures guy. And so, like, when you see that the guys that they have kind of locked down as either starters or depth pieces, and the work that they need to do that offensive line, you better get serious about this very soon. And I think that the Bears and Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles will agree.
Yeah, and as you're going through all those names and just talking about the offensive line, like I think about these names like Coleman Shelton and Matt Pryor and Tevin Jenkins and even Braxton Jones. They're all so close to being guys. They say, "Oh yeah, that guy's a starter. That guy's a stud. He's good. He's going to be like Coleman Shelton." Like he had didn't hear much about him until the bad snap that Caleb was able to recover and make a brilliant play off of. Matt Pryor, you've been talking about him this year. Not like you're saying you haven't said like he's like this great player, but he's somebody that's been a relative success this year. Close. Tevin Jenkins, we know how good he can be when he's not injured, but he's injured way too often. And then we just talked about Braxton Jones, where it's like it's been a nice story. He's been an average left tackle, but none of these guys screams, except for Darnell Wright, definite starter in your position.
No question. I mean, Ryan Bates on that list. What did the Bears get out of him last year?
Yeah,
Almost nothing. Karan Amagaji, what did the Bears get out of him last year?
Almost nothing. I just hope Karan is not a dud, like bad. Yeah, based on what we saw.
Right. And and then Doug Kramer, like, are your days of talking to Doug Kramer's grandparents in the Soldier Field elevator behind us? You know what I mean? Like, these are serious questions, but like, this is something. And look, like I just laid it out. Like, I just really do think that this overhauled offensive line has to include 2 higher end purchases, whether it's a free agent purchase or a draft purchase. Like, you got to go out and make an investment in this offensive line.
Yep. And center will be interesting because it's not a premium position, or a position which GMs usually like to spend massive dollars on. Studs, what else we got, buddy boy?
All right, we got time for 1 or 2 more here, I think. So this is one that Dan alluded to earlier, a regular listener, a man by the name of Mark Potash.
Oh, Potash.
Potsy, as they call him. So Potsy asks, do you believe the era of Haugh Hall dysfunction is over, or did the Bears just meet Ben Johnson's price? And once you guys are done with this, I have a direct follow-up to that question.
Grote, I'm going to turn this one over to you, but this is obviously clearly a response to the Rick Smith interviews that have gone on the last 2 weeks with the Bears Banter podcast, and then 670 The Score, with the declaration that this is a new Haugh Hall, that the old Bears are behind us. And Potsy, typically the skeptic, wants to ask a pretty skeptical question here.
That's what he does. No, I'll say, look, I'll stick with what I said last week. It was a very competent week for the Chicago Bears. The hiring of Ben Johnson was excellent. There's no way in hell that I'm going to sit here and tell you that that's it. The dysfunction is gone. They figured it out. Look, we don't even know. Ben Johnson. Oh my God, Ben Johnson might be a bust, Dan. It's possible that Ben Johnson sucks. It's possible that Caleb Williams will suck as a quarterback. All of that stuff. I don't think that is going to be the case, but everything is still in play. It was a great week. And to answer Mr. Potash's question, I'll wait and see before I pull back completely on the word dysfunction.
And even if Ben Johnson is great, he may still suck. And I say that through the lens of the fact that Matt Nagy was the NFL Coach of the Year and ultimately didn't lead any sort of sustained success from that. I think Ben McAdoo with the Giants was a Coach of the Year at one point. Brian Daboll was a Coach of the Year and fell off pretty significantly in the following 2 years. And so like they could have an amazing 2025 and you still won't be able to declare mission accomplished, right? Like that's where the Bears are, and it's where they've been for so long. You know where I stand with the the C concept. Can't talk about it until they've got 9 wins. Well, we can't declare the era of Haugh dysfunction over until the Bears have 9 wins in a season, and then they follow the next season with at least 9 wins, and then they follow a season after that with another 9 wins.
That's right.
Dysfunction is only in the rearview mirror when you're not undergoing major turbulence and major change every 3 to 4 years. And that's what the Bears have been in. Listen, I really appreciate Rick Smith going on the various forums he's been on and peeling the curtain back on what happened in the union between the Chicago Bears and Ben Johnson. But he also spoke like a guy who was in the afterglow of a deal that got his client, a reported $13 million.
Yeah. Look what I did.
Sort of unparalleled authority in the organization. And so of course you're feeling it like, yeah, everything feels great here right now. And so we'll see. Like I will say this, that like we've talked about Kevin Warren's presence, right, for a couple of years now, and what the hope was in terms of the competence level that he would bring to the top of the organization, and his unwillingness to settle, I think, is probably one of the reasons that Ben Johnson is the head coach of the Chicago Bears right now. That's a victory, right? Like that's a huge victory for the Bears.
Yeah.
And hopefully Kevin's push and ambition and guidance and leadership will continue to push the Bears in a forward direction. But they are so far away from being past the murky territory that has led to the claims of dysfunction. Look, like we know where the hype was last summer, and then where it was on Thanksgiving night. And life comes at you fast in this league. And so like as exciting as things are right now, I'm sorry to break it to you, Potsy, because I know you were you had your pom-poms out and your cheerleading outfit on, but like, we can't make that declaration just yet.
Yeah. I mean, he told me he wanted to write like a whole thing, like a 3 or 4 page story on the new direction and the new Chicago Bears and how everything's going to be great going forward. But
that's his sweet spot. That's what he does, right? Play the trumpets.
Mark Potash of the Chicago Sun-Times. Hey, do we have a concluding question, Studs, or have you had enough of us?
I think we got one good one.
Yeah, right? We got this. This was a direct response to Mark Potash after he asked that question to us on Twitter. This is from Stacy. How much success will the Bears have to have before Mark Potash is no longer defaulting to cynicism?
Oh man,
it's a postcard within a mailbag within an envelope with more mail.
I think that if the Bears have a really good year this year, Potsy will get off the Bears beat and start covering the Chicago White Sox. I think that's what it happened, just so he could be smothered and surrounded by negativity and bad play.
I do think that exchange between those two mailers, Mark Potash and Stacy, requires us within the next 2 or 3 weeks to have Potsy here in this forum to talk about where he stands after this entire hiring process.
Amen,
and everything he's gone through. So Potsy, we know you're listening. This is your open invitation to send us dates and times, and we're going to get you here on Take the North, and you can voice all of these things without having to send mail to Mr. McFeely.
And I'm sure he knows who Mr. McFeely is. Oh, yeah, I know Mr. McFeely. I thought Potsy had one of the great moments at the press conference the other day, because he asked, it was George. He started to say, oh, you guys are not known. You guys usually don't make the big hire. And George's like, oh, thanks a lot. Really, really appreciate it. I disagree with your premise.
I disagree with the premise of your question. That said, Ben wanted this job.
That's what he said. Hey, man. Hey, I will say, like, in terms of the positivity, George probably could have done a mic drop at the introductory press conference. I told all y'all, people don't usually turn down this job, and you had one raising his hand for it. Is that all the mail we have for today? Or all the time we have to read the wonderful mail from our wonderful viewers and listeners?
I believe that's it.
Is that all you got for us, Studsy?
That was his closing salvo there.
So it's like, I'm the hell out of here. Yo, all right. Well, we're out of here too. We appreciate the feedback, though. That's the point. We do read your feedback, and we try to bring it to the podcast every once in a while. So I hope you guys enjoyed that mailbag episode. For Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune, for our producer, Adam Studzinski, I am Mark Grote. Thank you for watching and listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.